Hello, far and wide. Welcome your faces back to another episode of the hit show, the award-winning. That's pending, because evidently Dog's told me that you can just nominate yourself for an AFL Media Award. Tradebusters, brought to you alive across the stream. Thank you to Narelle, who sent us these. Nicole Stanamaki sent us these, Dog. Look, these Ghostbusters.
That's awesome.
So the Tradebusters is alive and well. Dog, how the bloody hell are you?
Oh, I'm good, Pom. It was a nice weekend. Trade period's kicked off. We've had a couple of sexy deals. We've had a couple of sexy trade requests, and a few free agencies moves have gone through as well. So, mate, life's good, and this is the best time of year. As I said last week, I vowed not to get upset this year, and I won't get upset. I'll merely explain things as they happen, and I won't let it affect me. So don't let it affect you, community.
Mate, we've had a few crocodile done deals as well. So we're not covering Joel Hamlin because me and Dog called it that it would be done for free over the weekend. So that was done on Sunday. Really easy, that was. Do you know what I mean? We're doing this. Do you know what I mean? Glad you guys are doing this daily. I can chuck trade out in the bin. Hey, mate, this is it. And we had our first crocodile done deal. And I'm really excited about this one because I've listened to Gold Coast's argument. I've listened to the Doggies' argument. And I don't often say fans are wrong, but they're wrong. I actually think, on face value, this is an absolute fucking ripping deal for both sides. So, for those who don't know, we told you, we were talking about pick 4's definitely going to die and be sold, and we did say 10 and 17. They added some back-end work, and we'll explain why, but I really like this deal. Now, Dog and chat, what did you think about this deal at first value? Because at face value, it does look like the Dogs have overpaid, but me and Dog are going to explain why this is a great deal for both sides.
Yeah, look, face value, people might think the Dogs have overpaid. I had a few people message me saying the Dogs have overpaid. They did the maths. They're like, oh, they're losing out on draft points, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, I think the simplest way, before we get into all the machinations and all the reasons why this is a really exciting deal for both sides, the Dogs did what they needed to get pick 4 from Gold Coast. And with that pick, doesn't matter how many points it's worth, doesn't matter how many points the picks they set out are worth, they're going to get the player they want. So we presume, well, there's a couple of guys it might be, but I'll let you speak to that, Pom. But we presume it's going to be that small forward whose name is escaping me right now. Nick Watson. We assume it's going to be him, but they get the player they want. And or Dersma and Gold Coast, where they clean up here, right? They sent out pick 4, which they weren't going to use. They sent out a bunch of back-ended picks and a future third, which they might have used for a couple of points here and there, but now they probably don't need to because they've got 2 more draft assets this year, 10 and 17, which wouldn't be surprised if they trade them anyway. They might keep 17 for matching purposes, and then they've got a future first just because, as we've discussed, Pom, they're always going to need points because they're always going to have academy kids coming through in the following year. Love it.
Mate, it is Morrissey Bevtone. To answer your question, James, yeah, it's Morrissey, my friend, on my shirt. Cost me a fair pretty penny, this did. It's a limited edition Supreme one. So, maybe Pom's earning too much coin. Yeah, I mean, it's trade period, baby. Benjamins are rolling. But no, serious. Now, I agree with you. Now, why I think this is a great deal, right, is Amusement Productions and Lily. Absolutely amazing. So the rumours are Jordan Croft will nominate. He is their linked player. Now, when there is pick 10 and 17 in the bank, this is why I said 10 and 17 will be used to go up the ladder, that is around the ballpark of just before that is where Mr. Jordan Croft was expected to be taken, which means that what would have happened, them 10 and 17 are gone. So now they can get exactly as Amusement Production says. Watson, and that looks like who it is. There is loose links to Zane Dersma as well. They effectively get 2 top 10 picks this year by trading out their picks. So the future first, They get some more pick points back, 46 and 51. You'd imagine one of them picks may be used on the Nick Coffield deal. Do you know what I mean? Which brightens it up. But all in all, when Gold Coast is another upon prediction trade out pick 10, they have managed to convert a load of picks to match all these bids, and they get an additional pick next year. Gold Coast do as well. Great bit of business all around. And you know what? Like, somehow the doggies have worked a way of getting 2 top 10 picks. You've got the way I try and accommodate NGA and father and sons is they get an extra pick effectively if you trade right. And this is a great case of 2 teams manipulating the stupid AFL pick system so they both mutually agree.
Oh, it's great. I'll be praying internally that Carlton go for pick 10 now with their future first, just to give Gold Coast a few more assets next year, because I want more picks this year. So Nick Austin has been saying this. Thoughts on Nick Austin saying we're going to entirely focus on draft recruitment for the next 2 years? They've been saying that all year. Bryan Cook's been saying that all year, and so has basically everyone at the Blues. Asterisk, they've also said if the right player comes up, they'll trade for him. If the right free agent comes up, they'll trade for him. But it's really important. We missed a few years of bringing in young talent bomb by trading for Adam Sard and Adam Cher and those sort of guys. So it's a sound strategy, and you want to bolster the bottom end of your list now so that when Cripper and all these guys who are 28, 29, 30 are beyond it in a couple of years, we've actually already got those players coming through. So absolutely love it. And Nick Austin's proven he can hit the draft very well. Mate,
I love the questions, Davey, as well. Davey will come in a bit more into that count and do feature this week. A bit of love for Morrissey. Actually, my idol is Morrissey. So I've met him once. One of the most emotional moments of my life. When does Jordan Croft have to nominate? I believe it is the Friday of the draft week. So that would be November let me check my calendar, scroll down. The draft is there. It would be November the 24th, I believed. So yeah, I agree. Bevton, Gold Coast Academy is stat. The other deal that went through is, this one's an interesting one because this one, if you watch Nick in Austin's interview today, he mentioned it, Sauce mentioned it, and interesting enough, so did North Melbourne. And they all use the phrase, depending on deals going through, especially about Paddy Dow. And then the North mentioned it about Zach Fisher. Now, one of these picks involved in this trade is going to be the domino effect for others, and that's pick 23 went to Port. We discussed last week when me and Let Dog went through all the people who have nominated. Port have been linked to half of the AFL B team, and they have fuck all picks. Now, pick 23 straight away gets him in the market to get them. Big one is Geelong. Geelong are evidently looking at a start of the second for Ratakalia. Why? I don't know. Geelong evidently get more than anyone in this. It might be the deal with Cotton on. You never know. But Port gave up a future first, which is a risky strategy we've got to talk about because they haven't had a first-round pick since 1977, it feels like. But they get pick 22 and a future third back. The way Fremantle are losing players, that could be pick 19. Future first and a 23 and a second Fremantle got. So they get some collateral next year. This deal here is a bit of a nothing deal, but this really opens up them trades with Geelong, them trades with Essendon straight away, doesn't it? Like,
it does. And I actually want to look at Freo first. Opens up for them as well, because now they've got a first that they can trade out without risking what happened this year, right? They traded for Jackson. They lose pick 5, I think it was, as part of that, which you would do every day of the week. But now they have a future asset that they can either move on to try and bring in players, because they probably need to bolster their list a little bit without risking their own pick, which if this year happens again will be a good one, or it at least gives them a place to stay in the first round next year, which is good. And as for Port Adelaide, I think it's a great deal. Anytime you can turn what presumes to be a late first, like projects to be a late first into a couple of seconds, I'll take it, particularly when one of those seconds is this year's 23, which is a pretty early second. It does hurt Freo this year. It gives them very little to work with, but now they've had a few trade requests. We'll address that later in the show. Port will use 23 in one of these deals, and they'll probably use the future second in one of these deals. They are at risk of dropping off the edge at some point, I would say. I don't think they've bolstered their list as much as people think they have. I know they've got JHF and they've got, a bunch of young, pretty good players, Butters and whatnot. But I think the end is going to come for them, but they need to compete while they're still at the top. So this is just going to give them flexibility to bring players in this year. We know who they're going to target, BZT, Radaglia, that sort of thing. So again, a very logical deal, a very fair deal. There's risk in it for Port. There's little risk in it for Freo. Obviously, it just hurts their draft hand this year, but we know they're going to work their way back in.
You know what? This has got probably a little bit... You were talking about Port. Port's list strategy this year with the recruitment is a little bit like how my year 10 French report was. Could be good, but he's too busy looking at Natalia, row 1. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting what they do. What number does a future first round pull? Probably anywhere between, I mean, with Port Adelaide, you'd imagine they're going to be around the 8, aren't they? You'd imagine if you were a betting man. So let's just say they finish 9th. That's going to be what, pick 10? Yeah,
look, a future first, basically the way I look at it is, in my screen, we've lost Pom's camera, but I'll keep talking. The way I look at a future first, you basically add 3 or 4 positions onto where you think your team's going to finish. So if Port think they're going to finish with pick 16, I value it at 19 or 20 or 21. If we think Port are going to finish at 10, I value it at 13, 14, 15. So you add a few picks on, basically, is how I do it.
T Mello, we're coming up to that one, mate. We've got an absolute ripping deal for that. Like, this is all my own work, the Schultz deal, and it's genius. But like Dog's right, that is about what the value is. And teams sometimes shock, but then we've got the other deal. So we come on to the Carlton portion. Now, Fisher has been told that pick 42 isn't enough, which is interesting, right? It's an interesting ploy. Pick 42 has since been offered to Dylan Stephens, which Sydney have been rumoured to be accepting. Now, there's a report coming out in Sydney that they're happy to accept anything. Dylan Stephens was looking to maybe be on the verge of delisted next year. So that could be an interesting development there. So what we're looking at is ways that Carlton can be appeased. Now, to answer your question, says it's basically reverse draft order. So it's basically imagine no pick swaps and no compensation picks. If you finish second, that's pick 17. It's pick 17. If you finish last, that's pick 1. So basically, it's like a gamble. Teams are saying if you'll be good or shit, and they do that. So the trade one scenario for Carlton is Nick Austin did say late 30s is the rumour. That's the rumour. And both the clubs, very specifically, Rawlins at North, said that they were only a few picks away with the compensation. So that would suggest to me Carlton would accept pick 42 if they weren't going to get pushed back. They're still going to get pushed back, probably about 4 or 5 spots. So that would make me guess 34, 35. So what happens in this scenario, right, is Carlton gives Zach Fisher, he finds his way to North. Carlton get pick 35. Pick 2 and pick 3, their compo pick goes to the Eagles. Pick 1 and 35 leaves them. Carlton get a piece with 35. Pick 1 goes to North Melbourne and Zach Fisher, and pick 2 and 3 leave. Now, this is a fairly logical deal in the terms of that this is what both sides are looking to do. There is that massive talk today that North are going to make a play for pick 1, and it has been confirmed by Rawlins at North that that's what they're going to do. They are looking to get into the top end of the draft. He said, well, when you pick 2, potentially pick 3, If you're saying stuff like that, that means you're going after the only other pick you don't own.
Yeah.
And this one here makes sense because you will find in the AFL, historically, teams on trade at a higher pick when it comes back in the back end of a deal. So when it's steak knives, they put less value. Now, Chat and Let Dog, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it probably ends up being two separate trades. But this is the who says no segment. And I don't think anyone says no here, right? Carlton get a pick in the 30s, which is marginally better than a pick 42. Like really, in the real life world of things, it probably doesn't make heaps of difference for them. But then they can say, hey, we got a second rounder, or we got a almost second rounder for Zach Fisher. That's what we wanted. He's contracted, blah, blah, blah. West Coast send out 35 and 1, which we know they're not going to use those picks. They get 2 and 3. We're assuming the compo for Ben Mackay comes in. Look, it's going to be pick 3. You don't even need to question that. They're going to get pick 3 for Ben Mackay. He could have broken both his legs and had his arm chopped off. They're getting pick 3 for Ben Mackay. So they don't say no. And then we know that North get exactly what they want. They get pick 1. They get Zach Fisher. And I think this is a no-brainer, everybody wins sort of setup.
You could say, as the song goes, everyone's a winner, baby, that's the truth. Now, it's interesting, Ken, good friend of the channel, he's a big Hawthorn man. There is talk as well, Hawthorn are going to be one of them teams that's going to negate this. Now, you've got to remember that Will McCabe is linked to Hawthorn, so he's tied to them. He has nominated already. That's out of the way. Now, Hawthorn, what would that trade look like? You would imagine that with Hawthorn, if they were going to go for pick 1, right, they definitely have pick 4 on the table. There's probably a swap of a first for maybe a future second. And I'd imagine they'd be looking at pick 21 to come back to help then fulfill the requirement to get McCabe, which basically says to Hawthorn, they have 2 top 10 picks. They get Harley Reid and they get McCabe. And then that kind of negates next year. You'd imagine that's what the trade looks like for them. But as for this deal, it makes sense, doesn't it? And no, not really, because if the rumors are true, Harley Reid doesn't want to go there, right? Yeah. Which are unconfirmed. I personally think he would do, but it's a risk, and 2 and 3 is a massive improvement for them. And they'd probably trade, I'd say, pick 3 away.
Potentially, like they'd get their man. Presumably, they'd take Dan Curtin, right? And then try and get value out of that other pick. Bev Tone says a pick in the 30s is about right with all the compo, but with all the compo picks, I'd hate to settle for a pick in the mid to late 40s for Fish. Thing is, don't worry about that, because with the exception of the free agency compo picks, the academy and father sons, you're never going to have access to those players anyway. You can't have to build in a buffer knowing every year there's going to be 5 or 6 players that leave and get compo. So that's 5 or 6 players at the top of the draft. You're just not going to get access to. So you almost have to just not worry about the number that's next to the pick that goes for Zach Fisher. Clearly the club wants to sell to their fans and to their fan base. No, we didn't accept a pick of the 40s. We accepted a pick of the 30s. Oh, wait, it's actually ended up at a pick in the 40s. But I wouldn't stress too much about the number next to the trade. The Fish is going to go for cheap as chips.
I think,
and the other thing is, Pom, which almost confirmed what we've been saying on this show, is that we suspected Fisher was probably on quite a high wage over the last couple of years of his deal. Well, he's getting I think it's a 4-year deal with a trigger for a 5th at North Melbourne at reported $450K a year, which I reckon would mean they've flattened out what his salary is now a bit over a few years. So I think we were right. I reckon he was on 500 plus. So that's going to be also a huge savings for the Blues.
Mate, spot on. And it's all right when people are saying he's contracted. If that's coming off Carlton's wage bill, 400K, let's just say the reports are wrong. I always say it's somewhere in between. It was speculated it was 350. It's now been confirmed that the new deal's 450. And Brady Rawlings has come out and said they're engulfing Carlton's contract for 2 years. So let's just say it's 400K. That is a lot of money on a salary cap. That is a huge amount of cash. So Carlton have got to negate it. And the way I want you to think about players, imagine it's a Bugatti Veyron. If it's working, it's 200K. You see someone selling it secondhand and he tells you it needs a new engine and paint job. You ain't going to pay 200K for a 200K car knowing you've got 75k of work and then you've got your time. You're going to pay 100k and then hope you can get 180, 190k. So that's what they've got to do. But the second trade scenario I've got you, I really like this one. Carlton may have a punt. Now, it's interesting. Cal Toomey discussed this today, that 19 and 20 next year aren't guaranteed. And they did discuss, usually the AFL's review system is about 4 to 6 wins. Now, if North want to back themselves in, which you'd imagine 4 wins is quite prudent for that list, I think they could quite easily attain that. Carlton may look at this deal, and that's Zach Fisher and a future third, which on points changes this pick, if it was today, pick 19, to around 28, 29, yep. 30, which Carlton look like they want a pick in the 30s. This deal here secures pick 19 with 2 picks and also gives Carlton the scope, giving you a sneak preview of what's coming up later, to trade a first, knowing that they will have 2 assets in the future seconds, which we always talk about. The seconds are so important because remember, the Camporelli brothers ain't going to be super expensive with the discount system, and it works out better to have 2 seconds than it does 1 first. So this would make a real good sense for Carlton to take the piss.
I agree. I think it'll be something in this realm. Obviously, pick 19 to 25, whatever you want to call it, is worth far more than pick 35, pushes out to 42. So you have to send something back. And I think given, and it's probably even unders for this pick, to be honest, but given it's not a real pick, I think North Melbourne are going to be looking to move it on, and hopefully we're the ones that can do it. We know they're engaging with us on deals. We know they're engaging with Sydney on deals. It seems likely that we'd be in the driver's seat, unless they just do some shitty little pick swaps. It seems likely that we're the ones who can end up receiving this. Now, if I was North, I'd be going, okay, we're going to have 19 and 20 next year. I'd be going to like Collingwood, like, let's trade your 18 for next year. Let's just do a 1-pick swap. It'd be really dodgy, but also the AFL would probably crack the shits and not sign off on that. But
it's absolutely hella overs. Like, honestly, like you've got Nick Austin's right when he said that there are a few picks away, which I think Nick Austin values Zach Fisher, and rightly so, somewhere between 38 and 42. However, in reality, that's going to be 48, 49 with the combo picks. So he's definitely going to be, I'd say minimum he'll settle for the last deal, 35, which goes back to his value. This one here is about the same on points, but as says Nails, if the AFL choose to take them off in a review, and I'd imagine the way North are acting, teams are going to complain at the end of this year about the compensation. 100%. There's already been rumblings. They'll get removed. 100%. So this is the quickest way they can cement something back for it. So I really like this deal. I think it's fair for both parties.
Yeah, no, again, I think there's no issues with this. North need to trade out those. They just need to trade out those picks. I mean, it's as simple as that. And hopefully we're, as Carlton fans, the beneficiary. But I reckon there's some other stuff we can cover off, Bob.
And here we are. Nick Austin confirmed today that he's going up the draft order if possible. So we had a look. Right? And this is quite a tough one. But bearing in mind what we're talking about, later picks, things like that, the benefit here to Geelong is Geelong's list manager was really interested and said that he mentioned the pick 7 swap and saying that they're looking towards next year with impending retirements and to reset their list. We've been in the last, his words were the last shells of the window, which means, genuinely speaking, that they're probably going to have a pop at the title this year. They know this is probably the last year with that list. They can go for it. So for Geelong, pick 16 really brings them back into the crop. Now, as you know, the top talent in this draft is top 10, particularly when you count the compensation picks. So they know that they get another bite at the cherry. They get a future first. Carlton get about 600 points next year, which is very important. That would cover any bid 18 to 30 with the discount scheme for the Camporellis, but also they jump up to 7. Now, it's interesting because people are saying who Carlton are linked to. pick 7 is definitely putting them in that category for a guy that has trained with us and by all reports really impressed Luke Power in Nate Caddy. And it's interesting, if you watch Nate Caddy that game, played that medium forward role, which Carlton have been linked to a lot this year.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this for the last 2 weeks and even before that over on selection table here and over at teams over on Blue Abroad. We've been talking about this for a while. We think we're moving up the order this year. I always thought that was for draft. Maybe they'll try and get a couple of picks. Maybe it'll be for a player. But I definitely think the Blues are going to be looking to move up. I think pick 7's on the table. And this, again, makes sense to me, right? We don't need the future first next year. The bids are going to come presumably for one of the Camperellis before that pick. There's no point us having it. And it's really good value. Getting two picks around 16 or 18 when the Blues win the flag for pick 7's solid. It's solid. And I'm with you that Geelong are probably going to have one more crack and then they have to load up on the draft in the future. If they don't take pick 7 to the draft this year, they have to be using stuff to compete, and then they need to start reloading next year before Tassie comes in, because otherwise they're going to be in trouble.
Well, we keep talking about it. It's Epstein Island, their list. Too young, too old, and no one to make both sides being there all right. So this is going to be really interesting. Really, really interesting of what happens. Do you know what I mean? Of what happens and when it happens. But I think moving back to 16 gives them scope. And he could also give them scope that I wouldn't be surprised if you go through this draft. It's a very interesting draft in the terms of Victoria country talent. A lot of that country talent that Geelong really enjoy is mid to late second and early third. So they could even break that 16 up again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them break that up again. So that is how we go. But then we go to Taylor Adams, and Collingwood are going to feature twice in this show. But Collingwood's Taylor Adams, we covered it briefly on Friday. We'll cover it a bit more, has officially nominated St Kilda. Collingwood have come out and said that they will accommodate a trade, but they've spoken to the player. If a suitable trade can't be negotiated, he was happy to continue playing. However, we did do that show last week where we said Sydney are desperate for an inside mid, bigger body, and Taylor Adams' agent has come out and said that this is nothing else other than his role, and he wants to play in the midfield, which is a good idea for Collingwood to sell. I think we can all agree now's the time to sell for Collingwood because they've got some young boys. But a rough pick here is 24. They have got 32, but 32 looks like it's going to go and use on the Grundy deal. So 24 probably is about the money for a player that with what they've got.
Yeah, look, I think it's probably a bit overs for Taylor Adams given his availability, but you can only pay for what you can only use what you have, right? And we know, or we suspect 32 will be gone. They're not going to stuff around. Taylor Adams is the vice captain at Collingwood. I think that has some weight to it. They've identified him. The deal will get done. There might be a little bit of swapping at the back end to make it okay. But I think if they can get a mid-second round pick for him, Collingwood should absolutely do it. I think they should be moving on a couple of their veterans anyway. And if this gets Sydney what they want, that's good. Fantasy Freako, which is Champion Data's Twitter handle. Brodie Grundy and Taylor Adams were the number one ruck rover combination at the Magpies between 2014 and 2022. They play together. They're very good. They know how to work together. It makes sense. Again, Taylor Adams, if I was Sydney, is not the one I'd be going after. I'd be looking at like a cheaper Reece Matheson or a Matthew Kennedy or something like that. But this is the guy they've identified. So I don't think this one will be too complicated. I think it'll be pretty straightforward. There may be a swap of fourths or something.
Well, on this channel that we love a freeway four-way trade, right? Now, earlier today, Lockie Schultz announced he wanted to trade to Collingwood. Now, I see a few of you in the chat are talking about what's the pick value of Taylor Adams. I think if Zach Fisher is worth a pick in his 30s, Taylor Adams has got to be worth a pick in his 20s, right? Has to. Like, do you know what I mean? If you can get him right, that's unders. You're ready. This trade is going to blow you away because not often do I plot a trade while I'm in the car having a durry and look and go, fuck me, Pom, you're a genius. Here it is. Look at this trade. This trade is everything. So this trade here, Lockie Schultz goes to Collingwood. I'd love to know T Mello and Dr. Doofenshmirtz. They're massive Collingwood fans and big friends of the channel. So let me know where I am. But they get Lockie Schultz. They sell Taylor Adams. Pick 32 goes to Melbourne. They get rid of Brodie Grundy. They get rid of that salary off his deal. Taylor Adams and Brodie Grundy arrive at Sydney. Pick 24 and 32 go away. Pick 24 goes to Fremantle for Lockie Schultz. Now, bearing in mind, they won't hold Lockie Schultz over because it has been announced by his agent that this is personal family reasons. And as soon as that happens in the AFL, your talk of your first can be shoved up your ass because priority goes to the player. So I think, by heart of hearts, no one says no in that deal.
No. Well, who says no? Collingwood upgrade and probably save money by getting in another small forward that pushes Jidovic out of that side, I'd say. Melbourne get rid of Brodie Grundy. They get a pick. They don't really even care what pick they get, let's be honest. They're just happy that Brodie Grundy's money's off their books. Sydney get the two players they're targeting in Adams and Grundy, and they send out two picks that, like, Sydney are loading up clearly at another flag tilt. They've got enough youth in that side and they've got enough young talent that they don't really need to go to the draft this year. And then the difference between 24 and pick 18 is pretty minimal, let's be honest. I think given Freo's dearth of picks this year, they'd be pretty happy with pick 24. It's they'd want more, but I think at the end of the day, that's probably about right for the circumstances. Now, I will say this, Freo tend, unless they don't want to keep the player, tend to get really good deals for their players they're sending out. So maybe they could push for a little bit more. But in this scenario, I think this is a great four-way trade. I think no one says no.
I don't mean to be an arsehole, right? But small forwards and small defenders, unless they're ranked elite for everything, go for fuck all, right? So Sard is the exception to that rule. And that was kind of Carlton being very, 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 very nice at the trade table, right? But aside from that, these players are 10 a penny in the draft. So Schultz, like T Mello says, when it's family reasons, no one gets held over. And you've got to look at trades historically that have had that connotation, always lower in value. I think this trade here, everyone is happy. And I agree with Saz. Thank you. I don't see Jason, my mate in NT, he's saying no, but it's maybe the heat over there and maybe a few cold ones. Jacob Cov, it's funny because Fremantle have come out and said that it's the first they've heard of it on Western Australian radio this afternoon. So that could be one of them links, but you never know. Few trades coming up. Kazicki to Richmond for either 27 or which pick seems fair? I think pick 27. What about you, Let Doug? I think key forwards who are young, who have been blooded, always go for a bit more.
I think if you're talking on actual output, like in a fantasy draft, right, where you measure just on purely points, 27's way overs. But in real life, where it takes a long time for forwards to develop, I think 27 is what you'd be asking for sure.
And Jimmy R asks, is Essendon a destination club? So we've got a couple of Essendon deals. So this is the first one today. I've tried to make this easier to understand. So basically, Todd Goldstein goes to Essendon. He leaves North Melbourne. No compensations involved. It's a fair swap. Now, this is one of the deals, and this is probably the more interesting deal, is the deal for Dersma. So Dersma has announced he is requested a trade to Essendon. Now, I think to answer that, and I'd love your opinion, Let Dog, I don't think they're a destination club because I mean this with all sincerity because I'm not a Carlton fan for the purpose of this. I'm just a football fan analysing the trades. Who have they got is my question. Yeah, they've attracted a load of players that are keen for it. But apart from Xavier Dersma, no one's been linked to Essendon that excites me. They're just squad players.
Yeah, Ben Mackay, Jade Gresham, Xavier Dersma, and Todd Goldstein. Look, I think it's probably a good thing that these players want to go there, right? But there's a reason the players are all available. A couple of them are free agents, yes, but there's a reason that they are available. It's similar to when the Blues, like, we never had a problem attracting players. We attracted Mitch McGovern and Zach Williams and these sort of guys, but Jack Martin. But there was a reason they were available. Caleb Marchbank. It's because they had injury histories, or they were inconsistent, or they had a low floor, they had a high ceiling, low floor. I had Essendon pegged as dropping the arse falling out of him again next year. I had him pretty low this year in my ladder predictions. I haven't looked at it with the new players coming in. In one sense, Ben Mackay is better than Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, but in another sense, he's not that much better when he's the sole key defender. Gresham is probably better than Will Snelling and Matt Welfie. Yes, that's true. He's probably not that much better. Todd Goldstein's back up, that's fine. And Dersma is a solid player on the wing. He's underrated. He's just always injured. So I get why they're targeting these guys. They are available. They don't have to give up a lot to get them in. But I think we will look back and it probably will hurt them in the long run. Remember, these guys are all getting paid in the new CBA. So they're all going to be getting paid a shitload. It should all even out. But I just got a feeling we're going to look back, and I don't think this is going to be the dynasty start to build your flag. I think this might be a potentially when we look back in the future, it might be, fuck, they spent that much on all those guys. Jesus Christ.
Dave, last of the Werribee slander. I live in Werribee, mate. Andrew, I agree. Now, they're at the start of their rebuild. So, like, you see, I think Let Dogs nailed it there. Because Carlton, the players we got, were either big question marks, and like Jay Gresham, could be good if the guy can stay on the paddock. Ben Mackay, I am telling you now, if Essendon, if North, and we had a proper compensation agreement that didn't give pick free for a guy that hasn't seen grass for 28 games a year ever, right, they wouldn't be trading him. They'd be matching that bid. They'd be matching that bid and keeping him. And then there'd be a huge... Essendon would have to trade for him. And the only reason they're not is because Dodoro's tighter than my auntie. You know what I mean? And last time she went into a wallet, fucking people got hit on the head by bats. So I look at this and I think that this is probably the fairest deal, right? This is the fairest deal. So we looked at deals that Essendon could do. Now, there's probably a caveat here. People might say, Dodoro wants a first rounder for Brendan Zerk-Thatcher, right? Okay, cool. I wouldn't mind being Travis Kelce and fucking dating Taylor Swift. But I
knew it was going to be a Taylor Swift one. I knew it was going to be Taylor Swift.
But in the realms of where Pom lives, planet Earth, that ain't happening. So Xavier Dersma is a contracted footballer and he has high upside, right? Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, I think this is a fair deal. That is basically a fair swap for swap, but we never see player swaps here. That they just switch picks, basically. They switch picks. Why pick 39? It probably gives them something to do a bit of a late deal. There is talk that the compensation pick for Mr. Gresham is going to be a late first. So that helps that deal out. But the pick 39 here may help them towards the back end, top up on their players. But for me, I think this is a real straightforward deal. Xavier Dersman wants to go to Port. Brandon Zerk-Thatcher wants to go to... Sorry, Zerk-Thatcher wants to go to Port. Dersman wants to go to Essendon. It's a fucking straightforward deal to get this done.
It should be. It should be. But we just, as you said, we don't do player-for-player swaps.
Yeah. Go on. Yeah, I can't wait. It would be nice if Ben Mackay just traded to Carlton, but we have one final deal, and this is going to give us a bit of a discussion because me and Lekdog fucking hate compensation. And
makes sense. Anyway,
Tom Dodie walked to Brisbane, and surprise, surprise, when Adelaide found they were getting an end of first round pick, they didn't match the contract offer. I mean, fucking shock there. They got first rounder for a guy that hasn't touched grass all year. And it's a straightforward deal. Pick 19. AFL pay that fee for him. Tom Doddy finds his new home. If Tom Doddy can stay fit, he'll be an absolute massive asset for Brisbane. Pick 19 is a great pick. Now, I think it was Lily who was mentioning about Tyler Welsh. This is a really interesting conversation, right, about it. Tyler Welsh is in that horrible pick range, and I would suspect Finn O'Sullivan and Sid Draper are two players that are definitely top 2 next year. But Tyler Welsh is by a country mile the best key forward in that draft. And with Tex Walker leaving and he is landlocked to Adelaide, they will definitely be looking at that draft next year as a free hit. So 19 coming in gives them a really interesting prospect to really hit that draft hard and also get some talent here. Because the South Australian talent, which Adelaide pride themselves on, a bit different to Port Adelaide, you find these guys genuinely do attack South Australian talent. Outside of Jack Deline around their picks, Adelaide, and their first rounder, there isn't much South Australian talent this year. There's in fact only one player in the top 25 talents, and he is landlocked, as we've discussed, with other clubs. So I think this could be a really interesting one.
It is. I think Tom Duday's, we're going to look back and he'll be the best free agent that moves in this off-season. I know there's question marks over his knees, but we've seen Caleb Marchbank, Sam Doherty. We've seen guys at Carlton alone come back from that, multiple knee injuries. If he could come back from that, I think he'll end up being the best player to move as a free agent this off-season. Really rate him. And I think Brisbane were only missing one sort of really another good, solid key defender, but second or third tall defender type player. So I think the fit's great. Pick 19 is an end of first round compensation pick. So that means he's getting paid at least $750K a year. Mix in some herb and spices to adjust the salary, but that's the threshold for an end of first round compensation pick. I've had a few people ask me this, so I'll say it on the show. Why are the compo picks this year so high? The interesting thing about that is they're using the threshold. So 750K is end of first, 800K is after your first rounder, 600K is after your second rounder, whatever. They're using the old threshold, Pom, to measure what pick you get. But the deals that are being offered are in the new CBA. So this 750 plus K deal for Tom Duday, if he signed this deal last year, it's probably only a 600K deal. But because he's now getting that extra 10 to 15% on top from the new CBA, it's pushed the compo out. So this is kind of a free hit. It's actually probably the perfect year to lose a free agent, to be honest with you, because you're going to get more than really you would get any other year, because next year they're probably going to adjust the compensation structure to be more in line with the new salary structure in the new CBA. So that's why there's going to be so many first and second round picks as compo this year. It's basically because for whatever reason, the AFL decided, we're not going to move all of the salary requirements and rules up. We're just going to do one and we'll fucking work it out later on.
It's one of the funniest things. Like Jacob Cov here nails it. Like you look and you think Buddy was pick 19. And then you ask yourself, if the compensation was all fair, we should be saying, right, Buddy Franklin, he's a jet, one of the best of all time. We should be looking at pick 19. He's always someone as good.
Yeah, I think the issue, right? So he was good enough for a band one compensation. They just happened to win that flag that year, so they had the 18th pick. So the issue for me is that people look at the word compensation, fans, clubs as well, and they expect that to mean fair compensation. But that's not what it is. It's not fair compensation for the player. It's compensation. I think, personally, you're lucky to get given a third round pick if Buddy Franklin leaves. No one said it had to be fair compensation. The compensation, in my mind, is that you have an available list spot and you don't have to pay them the salary. In my perfect world, if we had to keep compensation, it would just be if your player's good and he leaves, you get a third round pick. If they're not good, you don't get anything else, right? Because I don't see why people... You go.
Sorry. My big issue with it, though, right, is it's shit like this, right, where they filed the paperwork, Adelaide get 24 hours to respond. They find out they're getting pick 19. Brisbane's first pick is pick 28, 26 or whatever it is, but will be 28 by the draft. And they say yes, because they know if they match it, they ain't getting anything better. And that is my issue. My issue is, and I understand, like what I was saying about Buddy Franklin, we should be thinking, though, regardless of where they finish, a first-round pick, which let's just say 19 is, right? You get pick 19 because you won the flag, right? It should be an elite, all-Australian caliber player gets you that. And Tom Dodie, yes, he potentially could be. If he's fit.
But he's not.
But in reality, he's not. And this is my issue. It should be worse than if you traded. In my opinion, compensation should be less than traded because it's protecting the club.
Well, I agree. And I think the fact that you get to find out and review it and then make your decisions crazy. I think you should know what the offer is for a restricted free agent. You need to know what the offer is, and then it's your choice to match. You don't get to find out if you choose. By the way, if you're a restricted free agent and you choose not to match the player's salary, you probably shouldn't get a pick anyway. You shouldn't be getting rewarded for not trying to keep the player that's the restricted free agent. And you shouldn't get time to review and make up your mind and go, oh, the offering is pick 19. That's way better than pick 28. It should be, if you're going to risk him going as a restricted free agent, if you're not going to match the deal, well, then it should be tough titties. You get what you get. But instead, we've got this weird pseudo, everybody wins, communism, like weird sort of AFL setup where everybody's got to come out feeling happy. And it's a competitive game, a competitive environment. They're professionals. It makes no sense to me as it is.
From memory, weren't we offered a second rounder and then the AFL took it off us in that Jared Wade
I
game?
can't remember specifically that. No. I'm going to pull up my database of free agents.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it should be hard. I agree. Just where I'm standing, I don't like restricted free agency at all. I don't like unrestricted free agency either, but I think restricted free agency should be black and white, right? Because it does flux. Matt Goldonthorpe, can the Camporelli boys nominate Father and Sons Crows? No, they can't, because you've got to pay 100 games, the dad has, and they can't go through the NGA system. A good level of rule of thumb is if the players in question train at the NGA. Now, the Camporelli boys have flown in 5 times this year to Carlton's academy. They're also coached at Glenelg by Carlton coaches, go up there regularly. So that's usually a good indication that no matter what happens, Carlton will go. So don't worry about it. Sapphire, was I right? I'm pretty sure from memory, if my memory serves me correct, we're going fucking way back, 2014. I am sure Carlton were eligible for a second round pick. And for some reason, we didn't get it. And it was abstained. And I'm pretty sure it was because it fell under some kind of contractual loophole.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pulling it up. Putting it up now. I think it might have been his age because I think the salary was big, but then the AFL said, "Oh no, he's too old or something." Yeah.
Interesting fact, but I mean, it's be an interesting one. It'll be an interesting one, but Tom Dodie, P19. I mean, I agree with T Mello that Brisbane's defense is stacked with really good players. So if they can, that was it. His age, yeah. Do you know what I mean? He was 31, wasn't he? 30 or something? I can't remember.
31,
what it was.
Yeah. I've pulled up a Trig said as well at the time. We've got no visibility over the scale of the contract. We don't even know how much he's being paid. We just know it's a 2-year deal, and that because of his age, we're not getting anything. So, yeah. And to be honest, I don't want to talk about father sons right now, but I think I'd see no difference between 100 games and 1 game. So I think if we're gonna just fuck everything with the father son rule, it shouldn't matter how many games you played. But let's talk about that on another show, Paul.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, pick 19. It is what it is. And it'll be interesting what Adelaide do with that, because, I mean, Adelaide have got a real strong draft hand as it stands. Pick 9, probably pick 10 when it comes to the draft. They'll have 21 and 24. Now, it's interesting. Adelaide may look... I could see Adelaide being one of them teams that may look to trade up or even trade picks for futures. So they could be a team that I have earmarked. You know what I was talking about with Geelong doing the pick 7 for pick 16?
Mm-hmm.
And I said all the Vic Country boys who are Geelong affiliated are in that area. They might look at pick 16 and knocking back to 19 and 21 for a future pick from Geelong and doing that deal, because it helps Geelong out and it helps them out, but it also gives them that thing there. We'll take a couple of questions before we go. Free agency.
I actually have a mathematical answer for Ken's question, by the way.
Tell you what, over to Lapdog.
So, Ken, free agency helps bad clubs to gain towards the bigger clubs, just like North Melbourne with all those players they got. The theory is that that's what should happen, right? And if you look at the numbers, North, Gold Coast, all the shit clubs have gained more free agents than anyone else, for sure. But when you remove delisted free agents and you remove free agents that never play more than like 10 games for their new club, it's very much just the top end clubs that move. So the top end clubs that get the good players. So of all the players who have won either a premiership, a Norm Smith, an All-Australian, a best and fairest, of all the free agents that have moved and done that, and there's only 13 of them, they all either went to a club that was way better than them, aka Gold Coast to Richmond, or they went to a club that was essentially the exact same position as them. So the numbers would suggest, if you don't drill down into it, that yes, lower clubs do get access to more players through free agent, but the quality of those players is severely, severely worse off, particularly once you filter out the delisted free agents and like guys who like this isn't a good example, but like a Reece Palmer, right? He wasn't actually a free agent, but he technically moved to a worse club at Carlton for pick 135. So yes, on the way to numbers, it looks like that. But if you drill down, it's as you'd expect. Good players go to good clubs.
I was hoping Letdog would use the phrase worser.
Worser.
Inside family joke that my kids are starting to use that as a continuous verb. Kai Brim, I know this is late to the piece regarding this, but does the potential Carlton Geelong pick swap cause a future slide of key defenders in this draft? Now that's an interesting one, because today a report in the Western Australian, just so you know, these shows, if you do want to become a member, it would help the channel out, because I have subscribed to just about every fucking media outlet in Australia. Like Mrs. Pond, when she checks the credit card statement, she's going to chin me at the end of this year. But Western Australian is reporting that they are not into Dan Curtin, and they are heavily into and met numerous times Connor O'Sullivan and Ollie Murphy. So Connor O'Sullivan is the swingman out at Murray Bush Rangers, but also Sandringham Dragons. And they also mentioned in that article, it was quite an interesting article, GWS and GWS's affinity with bringing school kids over. And that's why GWS have had a real good retention of Victorians. That's a really interesting development. So I agree with you, Kai. It could cause that if because a lot of the clubs that are in them picks don't need key defenders. But that's why I say just keep an eye out on if that pick swap happens 2 and 3, because I reckon pick 3 will go to another club, and then I think they'll look to switch down. So I could see St Kilda, maybe even Melbourne, going up to 3, so they've got 3 and 4, and then slipping back to where they are. So I actually reckon you might look at the Eagles and they might give up Dan Curtin, because the reports are coming out of there. They are looking at merging it. So that could be an interesting one. Always a great question as well, Kai, because always a good thing to look for. People sometimes, they do their phantom draft in order of skill and forget that teams have got to recruit what they need.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good shout. Good question. Because obviously that's the other thing, right? Depending on who owns the picks, it completely shifts the draft order. It's not often a club takes best available if it's a key defender and they've got 3 key defenders. Good question here from Joshy. Clearly a Carlton question. Do you think the Blues should look at Brodie McLaughlin?
I'd save that for the last one because I know you absolutely love this guy.
Pom, I love anyone that can just kick bags and bags and bags of goals. And this guy kicked bags and bags and bags of goals. So for Gold Coast in the VFL, he kicked, I'm just pulling it up, 55 goals in the VFL, a few hauls of 6 and 7. And before he got picked up, he was also, you'll probably know this more than me, he was the leading, last year, he was the leading goal kicker, I think, in the VFL as well.
Yeah. Interesting.
Not
if you
sure.
watched the Carlton game, he absolutely pulled our defence apart. So I think he had 5 goals. Absolutely killed us. Absolutely
5 goals, 16 touches. He had 4 or 5 bags of 5+ in the VFL. I just think he's someone who can play footy, and a lot of the time, and I don't know why I didn't make it at Gold Coast. I don't know why I didn't get a game with them. But I always love looking at players who are good at football, which I know is a really basic thing to look at. There's a difference between a good footballer and a good athlete and a superstar that is both of those things. I think McLaughlin is a good footballer, similar to, what's his name? Jack Higgins in his draft year. He slipped because he was small, but he was a good footballer, came in, was really good. Caleb Daniel was similar. He was short. No one wanted to draft him, but he was a good footballer. He became good. I think McLaughlin is a good footballer. So, yes, I'd be keen. I don't know if he'd get into our team, but he'd give you options at that sort of high half 40, third forward type role.
I think he's interesting. I mean, he comes from Frankston Dolphins. If you remember at the time, he was an SSP for Gold Coast. And
yeah, he was.
Frankston have been pants for 5 years, and he was a real standout there. He's coming up to that mid-age thing, so he's probably worth a punt for a lot of sides. We talk about key forward at Carlton. Outside of Harry and Charlie, you're either stopgapping Jesus or you're hoping Harry Lemmy is fit. But Harry Lemmy is about a year and a bit away. So that would be really a big risk, I think. So I don't mind it. And there is a famous Frankston Dolphin at the club in Nick Newman. So
there you go.
And
second in the BNF.
Two of the coaches of Nick Newman are still at Frankston. So there will be that bit of a connection there as well.
Yeah, I just think I think for us, we're going to hit the draft. We'll probably, by the time everyone leaves, when we talked about this today, we'll have 4 or 5 list spots available. You probably imagine one of them is Hollands if he comes in. One of them's a delisted free agent. You draft 3. You might have one more final spot available. And we've seen Nick Osty likes to take a punt on the mature age guys. And Brodie McLaughlin would fit into that for me.
Well, it's interesting.
And at worst case scenario, you'll have the leading goal kicker in your VFL team.
Interesting as well. You've got to think of it this way. Nick Austin has confirmed we'll take 4 picks in the draft. The dream is to recruit 4 players. When Zach Fisher and Dow leaves, that was 6 players. So at the moment, it's 4. So it's very, very, very interesting that I would say, bet your ass to a band dance, 2 players come through in the rookie draft, right? Or in the delisted free agency period. So Brodie would fit that bill. And if you ever watch Carlton VFL, the lack of tolls does fuck up a lot of players. Kai's responded. Good day to you, Kai. Love the questions, by the way, Kai. Spot on. This is my biggest annoyance. When they do the mock drafts, they always forget 2 big things. One is depth and positions, because every year someone with 8 key forwards is linked to fucking a key forward in the draft.
Yeah.
But 2, so also that goal factor. So like I was saying, Connor O'Sullivan was a lesser link in the W Australian. The big one, though, was Murphy. And there's a few Sandys Dragons players towards the middle of the draft in their next picks that they were talking about. They've been doing that research. So I think that could be one. Spot on, Sapphire. That's why we've only got 4 list spots. Chin Cotter was officially a replacement for Zach Williams, who will come back on.
Yes, So instead of 6, we'll have 5. Yeah.
Yeah, remember O'Keefe he was already an extra list spot because Phil was delisted, but Carlton went into this with an extra spot. So it's only -1 of what we delisted. So we have 4 at the moment, 6 max, unless Carlton trade someone we don't know about. But really interesting chat. Thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully we have some really good deals for you. Until then, peace, love. Pom out.
Go Blues.